It's time to share secrets and insights from fellow entrepreneurs. If you're looking to grow or start a business and you're a game changer, then keep listening to Avanti Entrepreneur for great advice from your host, Dave Mammano, America's entrepreneur coach.
Hey, Avanti Tribe, Dave Mammano here. Just want to thank our sponsor, Paychex. You know, Paychex, they make it simple for businesses of all sizes to pay and manage their team. They make payroll easy with employee pay options, including direct deposit, checks, pay cards, and so much more. Founded over 4 decades ago to relieve the complexity of running a business so that the owners can focus on what matters most. Above all else, and more than any other company, Paychex makes it simple. Visit AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Go to our partner link and check them out. They're offering you a free month of payroll just for giving them a shot as an Avanti Tribe member. Give them a shot, folks. They really help this podcast to be possible. Really appreciate Paychex. Now, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am David Mammano, your host, and we're here to help achievers and business owners and leaders move forward. That's what Avanti means, move forward so that they can reach their potential. I do this by interviewing Rochester business movers and shakers. Today I have on the show a massive mover and shaker and a massive impactor of entrepreneurs and just people around the world, Ed Mylett. Ed, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you. Been looking forward to this for a while now.
Well, that I'm honored because I know that you do a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews, know a lot of people. So the fact that I'm on your mind, I'm blessed and humbled.
Well, thank you. I do a lot of interviews where I interview people, but I don't do a lot where I get interviewed. So this is something I'm looking forward to very much.
Excellent. And don't let me forget, I have a co-host on my show today. This is the first time I've had a co-host.
Wow.
It's my friend, Mike DiCioccio. Mike, welcome to the show, you too.
Hey, Dave, thanks for having me. And Ed, this is a pleasure and appreciate you having me as well.
Privilege is mine, brothers, both of you. I'm looking forward to it. Let's do it.
I mean, I met you through Mike. When I met Mike, he launched our Avanti Entrepreneur Network chapter in Buffalo, New York. And he said, hey, have you heard of this guy, Ed Mylett? And I said, no, tell me more about him. He sent me videos, interviews, you and Lewis Howes. I mean, and I'm like, I love this guy. We got to get him on my show.
Well, thank you. I hope by the time we're done that I've not blown my reputation with you, Mike.
I'm sure you're gonna bring it. And in a little while we're gonna give the floor to Mike as well because he's got some questions for you too.
Okay.
So Ed, you know, I have your bio here and it's super fantastic. I could read it, but I think it would be so much more exciting if you just kind of, you know, gave us, as they say, the elevator pitch of your bio. And then I want to dig in and go down some rabbit holes with some great questions about your success, which really, you know, since I've learned more about you, goes back to the water bill being turned off as you were struggling to get on your feet to now this massive success. As I'm looking at you on video right now, you have the Pacific Ocean behind you.
Yeah.
So talk about water, right? Getting the water turned off to the Pacific Ocean behind you. What a great metaphor for your success. Love to hear the quick overview of you know, where were you and where you are today.
Wow. Okay. And by the way, it's awkward for me still to hear my massive success. I candidly I'm not being falsely humble either. I truly don't feel that way. But however, when I see that ocean every morning, it's a reminder that things have gone pretty well. So the Reader's Digest, the elevator pitch version is I grew up in a very middle-class family, great family, loving family. Dysfunctional, though. My dad was an alcoholic for most of my upbringing when I lived there. I think anybody who comes from dysfunction, whether it's divorce or drug addiction, alcoholism, or just lack of love in a home. My home had love, just my dad was a drinker. He's now sober, 30 years, my best friend, by the way. But I think that sows into you as a kid some insecurities, some anxiety, probably causes you to grow up sooner than you need to. So I had that kind of an upbringing, lower middle class to middle class, looked good from the outside, behind the door, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress in my family. And I played college baseball. College baseball ended. I was going to be a Major League Baseball player. That's all I was ever going to do. I did have a pretty major catastrophic injury where I got hit with a pitch, formed a tumor on my calf. That tumor recurred. The second tumor is still in there because they would have to take part of my leg with it. And I found myself unemployed out of college. I had my degree, unemployed. Dad comes home from an AA meeting everything in your life happens for you, not to you, right? Everything. In hindsight, we always know that's true. But when it's happening, it doesn't seem that way. One of the gifts you could give yourself in life, by the way, is to have hindsight vision in the present. And one of the things I can assure you of is everything in your life is happening for you and not to you, particularly if you repurpose the damage done to you and use those things to your advantage. Dad comes home, got you a job, McKinley Home for Boys. I didn't know what it was. Bottom line, I showed up, and it was a group home, a campus of group homes. And so hundreds of boys on one campus, all living in cottages, all were taken from their families. My boys were, the majority of which were molested, or their families were either incarcerated or dead. They were orphans. I walk into this cottage, I'm 22 years old, and I got 8 to 10-year-old boys staring at me saying, love me, care about me, believe in me, help me. I became like their father, their big brother. I was there when they came home from school. I was there when they get their grades. Christmas was me, not their parents. And that experience altered my life. It was $6 an hour, but it altered my life because I went from being this ego-driven, competitive, and I'm still competitive, but me driven guy to I found out, oh my God, I love helping. I love contributing. I love loving people. I'm good at this. I'm good at caring about people. I'm good at believing in people. I'm good at building people up. And it just changed my life, this experience at this group home. I mean, it just altered my being. And while I worked there, the financial company that I ended up building kind of my money career with approached me. And I had the really great blessing of going into business now with the desire to help, serve, contribute, believe, and love people, and really not money, ironically, because I had learned pretty young that's not what fills you up. And so, and then I became an entrepreneur. Like most entrepreneurs, struggled really bad, false start after false start. Being an entrepreneur is like you get it going, then you don't. You get it going, then you think you have it, and then you don't. It's the greatest self-discovery, self-awareness, self-improvement program ever created in the world. And if you can get good at it, the best compensation attached. And I went through the struggles every entrepreneur has. I had a car repoed. First house I bought got foreclosed on. But the worst part is what you described. We woke up one morning and there's no water in the house, actually in the apartment. And I was newly married to my high school sweetheart, and it was shameful. It was emasculating. We had to get up every morning and go down the stairs in our apartment to the pool, outdoor shower, and my new bride would shower. I'd hold a towel up so people couldn't see her in the cold. And then we would walk back up our stairs and get ready for our day. And it was embarrassing. And even when I say it now, my body changes. Because you can have the power turned off, you can live. You don't have water, you can't cook, you can't bathe, you can't do anything. And so from there to now is relatively miraculous. I have a home in Laguna Beach, oceanfront here. It's got to be one of the 5 or 6 most beautiful pieces of property, I think, in the world. I have a home in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho that is superior to this. That's my favorite home. I've got a Falcon 900 jet that's mine. I don't have a partner. Multiple homes, every car you've ever wanted in your life. 3 boats, pretty good life, right? Materially, all of those things are owned debt-free. I have no mortgages, no debt on the jet, the homes, the boats, the cars, nothing. We're completely financially independent and I think probably wealthy. And that's happened through being an entrepreneur over the last 25 years.
I think one of the things, why Mike and then myself will say kind of fell in love with you is that with all this massive success, you really are such a nice, humble guy. I could tell. I'm a very good judge of character, and I could tell that you lead with love. You lead with service to others. Mm-hmm. You with all the success. I've done a little study on you. I mean, it seems like you have a great family, great wife, great kids. You are, very faithful, to your faith, mm-hmm. and it's rare, I think, when you find all those things together, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that water being turned off and things like that. Still runs through your veins a little bit and keeps you humble. I'm just guessing here, but
you could not say something nicer to me. By the way, I'm a mess all the time, like every other person. I screw up all the time. In my faith, I'm a sinner saved by the grace of God, right? There are a lot of mornings, though, brother. I look at this ocean. I'm like, are you kidding me? But there are other mornings, and I'm not exaggerating this. Not every morning, but, that water hits me in the face out of the shower, and I'm like, thank you, God. Like, I'm just grateful for simple things. Yeah. I think God knew I would be a pretty big idiot if I got a bunch of money before he humbled me. I'd have been a dummy, right? So I think that whole experience in the group home, and ironically enough, my dad's alcoholism prepared me to be good for these boys because I related to their anxiety. Not the same thing, but my dad's drinking happened. I don't find that job without my dad being in an AA meeting. I don't relate to these boys if I didn't have anxiety in my home. And so I'm just a regular guy. I mean, I really am. With his own insecurities, I'm still incredibly introverted and shy naturally. But something shifted in me, brother, in that group home that's not gone away, which is those jets, I don't have jets, that jet I mentioned, or these homes. I want everybody to have great material things in their life. They're awesome. You should have them. They will make you happy, by the way. People say material things will never make you happy. Those are people who don't have material things or don't understand. Having said that, listen to me, everyone, please. They will not fulfill you. They can make you happy short term, and they're wonderful, and you should have them. This is a better view than the view I grew up with, and I feel stronger, more powerful, more connected, more grateful because it's here. But it does not fulfill me. What fulfills us in our life is contributing to others, is making a difference in other people's lives, is living our passion and our purpose. That's fulfilling, is our faith, whatever your faith is, however God reveals himself to you in your personal way. That is fulfilling. But you know what? You can have happiness and fulfillment. There's nothing wrong with having both of them. And material things aren't the things that bring us the most happiness or the most joy, but they certainly can. And when people tell you they can't, they're wrong. But I can tell you because I have all of them. If you wanted a material thing, I've probably had it. And I'm here to tell you as your brother, it will not fulfill you. You've got to go beyond it and find what your calling and your cause and your mission, who you want to contribute to, the lives of others. That will fulfill you. It'll never go away. That fire will never burn out. But the material thing, I know a lot of people who are temporarily happy with stuff, and they end up being miserable because they're not fulfilled. It happens all the time on my show, off camera. I end up mentoring and coaching many of these people that are on my show. They're my great friends now, and many of them have shared with me there's a emptiness there because they just chased material. They just chased accolades. They just chased fame instead of chasing contribution and service. So
important, Ed. So important. Probably the biggest lesson I think that any entrepreneur can ever learn is, the jet, it makes you smile. Your house makes you smile. That view makes you smile. But what makes your heart smile is service to others. Probably looking at your wife, looking at your kids, knowing that you're a good dad, you're a good husband. Yes. That's making your heart smile.
That's well said. Now, you guys out there that let that be a way out. Well, I am a good dad, so you fulfilled your promise. No. Your obligation with your children is to become the destiny version of you, is to make them proud of you. Because here's the thing, everybody. Your kids are always going to love you. But we've all had this happen, haven't we, as we get older? Your kids eventually figure out who you are. They eventually grow up. They figure out who dad is in the world, what the difference is dad makes, who he's helping, who he's serving, where he's been, what he's seen, what his memories are, what his legacy is, or mom. And so what will make your heart smile is unquestionably those people. But what will fulfill you is making them proud of you, is making a difference for them, of being the best possible version of you for them. So you're not off the hook by just being a good one. You got to do better than that. That's good. Being great is being the ultimate best version of you that you were destined to be.
Fantastic. So Ed, I got a big question for you. So you're a self-professed regular guy. Mm-hmm. And, we already determined that you weren't born with a trust fund and all this, I'll say, money and et cetera, that, truly from water turned off to the Pacific Ocean behind you. That maybe that's the title of your next book, something like that, right?
Good.
More water than you'll ever need.
Right. I got plenty of water. That's true.
But the question I have is just being a regular guy that was going through some tough times to the really phenomenal, massive success that you have in so many ways, checking a lot of different boxes, right? What do you attribute that to? What got that flywheel turning? And then continuing to run to these incredible levels of where you are today?
You're a great interviewer. That's a great question. I want to give you the short version first, and this is not selling anything. This is just because I'd like to really answer it better than I will in 2 minutes. I do have a book out right now called Max Out Your Life, and I'll pay for it, so there's no weird thing here. If you go to maxoutbook.com and use the code MAXOUT, I'll just buy the book for you. You have to ship it. There's no upsell after, like, get into this program or none of that other stuff, right? Like, you buy the book for free, but get into my webinar. There's none of that with me.
Right.
All my content is free. So I describe in more detail there this. The two big things that shifted for me was I found out that your life, the most powerful force in the human spirit, is to be consistent with the identity you hold for yourself, your own personal identity. Your identity is that sort of the thoughts and concepts that you hold true to be about yourself, your worth.
All right, we're back. Sorry about that, folks. Ed was outside, and I think the wind blew his wireless away. But so we'll suffer with not such a, well, it's still a nice view, but it's not the ocean. But Ed, welcome back, and we're in technical difficulties. Part of being an entrepreneur. We get back on track.
Probably we're just on fire, so we blew up the internet. But what I was saying was that the two shifts for me was, one was my identity. So I figured out that my identity, which is the habits, thoughts, and concepts you hold true to be about yourself, is the most powerful force in the world. So I had to consistently increase that identity. I do that. I covered it in my book, Max Out Your Life. Use the code MAXOUT, and you'll get it for free. So it's actually right here. It's a good example. Maybe they wanted me to show you this. See that thermostat right there?
Yeah.
On the wall? That's what identity is. Identity is the thermostat of your life. It's the governor. It governs everything. And so people think external conditions are what dictate it, but you have an identity. It's a thermostat. It could be in different areas too. You have a faith identity, a money identity, a business one, a body one, a relationship one. These are identities you hold. And no matter what you do in your life, you'll get back to that temperature you've preset. It always happens. And so people think, like this room, it's set at 76 degrees. No matter what happens in this room, I could open the door and cold air comes in here. That does not dictate the temperature of this room, because the thermostat's going to kick the heater on and heat it back up to that 76 degrees. I could open the door and it's warm air, and the air conditioner is going to kick on and cool it back down. That's what identity is in your life. And if you don't change that identity, you can change the business, your relationships, you can change everything. You're going to get that thermostat preset temperature. No matter if life blows cold air on you and you got to heat things up, you'll do that. And if you start getting life going great, you're making more money, business is growing, you don't change your identity, you'll look back in 6 months and go, oh my gosh, these random events happened. I can't believe my car broke down. I can't believe that appointment quit. Those aren't random. Those are sabotaging things you've had happen because of your identity. Once I accepted that, man, did my life change. And then in the book, I cover all the ways, the habits that you need to change your identity over and over again in very big detail, because I think it's the most important thing in life beyond your faith. And I think your faith can help dictate that identity. So that was one. And then two, I'm a big guy on habits and rituals and disciplines. You're going to get your habits. And so I had to take a hold of what I do every single day, what those habits are from the minute I wake up to the end of my day. The biggest shift I made was I don't react to the world anymore. So the first 30 minutes of my day and the last 30 minutes of my day are regimented like crazy, because I think that gives me more of a chance of having a measure of control over the rest of my day. And so I cover that in the book too. And so those are the two big shifts for me: my identity, which includes self-confidence, all these other things, and my habits and rituals, because your habits are what you'll go to under pressure, under fatigue, right? And so I had to get those dialed in, because the elite people I know that I've had on my show or other people, whether that be Dwayne Johnson or Sly Stallone or Tom Brady, or I don't care who you think it is, anybody and anything, the best school teachers, the best nurses have the best habits and rituals every single time. They have the best habits and rituals and the highest identity. So those are the two big things that changed for me.
Super, super fantastic. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I just read Grant Cardone's, 10 times book. And I know that you, Grant, our friend, or 10X book. Yep. And then also I just read a book called Cybernetics, which is a great book as well. It's all about changing the record in your head, right? Yep. I mean, if in my mind I'm 200 pounds, well, I can get down to 190, but that thermostat's going to go on and I'm going to get back up to 200, right? It's all about changing my identity, changing the habits. And I love what you're talking about, because you 20 years ago, you had a different record playing in your head, right? And you changed that record.
I did. My identity is people that meet me now. In fact, I had Brad Lee. I don't know if you know who Brad Lee is. He's Grant Cardone's good friend. Yeah. He ran in last week. He ran into in Las Vegas 2 guys I went to high school with who had lost contact with me. Mm-hmm. And he said, I had such a thrill in telling him what had happened with your life. It was really kind of odd for me, because I knew who these 2 dudes were. And they didn't know what had happened with me. And he said they just couldn't process that clown that I was has, had some pretty cool things happen in his life. And it took me back to who that dude was for a minute, which I don't go back there very often.
Right.
And had you met me in high school, I would not have, I would not have been the guy that you would say was out there with the ocean in the background. That's for sure. To put it mildly.
You transformed everything, your mind and your body, right? Because, people
right.
seeing that, you work out and you're looking great. And I did see a picture you posted of you in high school, and let's just say you weren't the muscle guy that you are now, right?
No, I'm not. I certainly don't look as good as I did 20 years ago, but for pushing 50 years old, I'm in pretty good shape. And it's an important foundation for me that my body is the other driving force, because I'll just share one thing for everybody is self-confidence is the process of keeping promises you make to yourself. Mm-hmm. How do I become more self-confident? You meet somebody self-confident, they have a consistent habit of keeping promises they make to themselves. It's self-trust. You meet someone who lacks self-confidence, they're constantly breaking promises they make to themselves. For me in business, I couldn't control everything, whether an appointment showed up, whether the internet broke down, right? Whether or not someone bought or didn't buy or got involved or didn't get involved. So where I could control was getting into the gym. I could keep that promise every day. I could control, I'm going to do 6 curls. I could control doing 6 of those. And so my self-confidence actually, ironically, started to get generated from the gym, because it was the one place I could deliver on the promises I made to myself. And that transcended eventually into business too.
Yeah, I love it. Well, it's very exciting for me right now, Ed, because I feel like you're like a pre-star, like you're about to explode and become on the level of recognition when it comes to the Tony Robbins and Grant Cardones of the world.
Yeah.
And so like, about 10 years ago, I had dinner with Simon Sinek before he wrote the book, Discover Your Why.
Simon's great. Yeah.
Right. And then about 5 years ago, I got to have lunch with Gary V. Right. And then, so I'm really good at getting to meet people right before they explode. So hopefully I'm some good luck for you.
Well, both Tony's the reason I got into the space, and Grant is a great friend. And so I will encourage everybody to go check out their social media engagement versus mine. And you can decide on who's bigger now, me or them.
Right.
Right.
All right.
We know.
I like it. We know.
So that's not even close anymore. Add theirs up and see if they're the same as mine.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, and Tony Robbins, what a guy. I mean, I remember in the early 90s buying his cassette. I'm dating myself. I'm 49 myself here. So bought his cassette when I had my job, Awaken the Giant Within. Mm-hmm. And Tony's the reason why I got into business. He inspired me. He said one thing on that cassette where I pulled over my car and wrote down this quote. And it said, if you are totally committed, you will always find a way. And I said, that's the answer. If my first business fails, I'll learn and I'll start a second and a third. I'll just be totally committed, right?
Yeah, I got to tell you regarding Tony, and by the way, Grant is a dear friend too. Both of them are. And they both, by the way, have been critical to my progress in this space. Tony was my first guest on my show ever.
Great.
And been a friend for 20 years. And Grant was really a catalyst in getting me to have more collaborations. He's the person who introduced me to so many other people in the space. And so I'm grateful to both those guys, but I tease them both about their social media engagement because mine has exceeded theirs now, and for the most part, and but not in their scope or their influence, their reach. And in Tony's case, I call Tony the OG of this space. Almost everybody I meet will tell me when they know that I know Tony, they'll stop me and say, would you please just tell him the impact he's had on my life? I bought his cassettes in the 80s, or I listened to this, or I won a program. It just blows my mind, the incredible reach that he's had in the world on so many people. Almost 100% of the guests on my show tell me to please tell him that. And he's the real deal, and he's wonderful, and he inspires me to try to be better all the time, more cutting edge with my strategies. And the thing that I think that separates Tony is its strategies, its tactics, right? And that's what I try to deliver as well, is things that you can actually do to change things, not just the motivation or the inspiration, but how do you actually change your identity? How do you build your self-confidence? What should your habits be? And so both those men are wonderful, but even Grant would tell you, Tony's reach in the personal development, self-help, business leadership space is beyond anybody's who's ever been in it. But I'll tell you, Grant's coming hard now too, and so is Gary V and all these other wonderful people. There's more access to great information in the world now about how to change your life than there's ever been in the history of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of common denominators with you all, but I think one of them is just Energizer Bunny on steroids. I mean, you guys, Tony, Grant,
I'm accused. The only difference is I'm the one accused regularly of actually literally being on steroids. So that's the separator between. That's the separator. But I'll give you an interesting thing. People go back and look at my social media. I went to the World Series last year with Tony and Grant. And so it was a very interesting experience, to say the least. And so we were at Game 7 of the World Series, Dodgers and Astros last year, right behind home plate. We didn't sit – Grant sat right in front of me and Tony sat there, but we were all within, we went together. We were in the same space together. Yeah. And it was just a fascinating time for the three of us because they had not met before. And so they were introduced to each other at that game, which was fun. So.
Right. I'm surprised a fire didn't start back there, all the energy.
It almost did, frankly. Certainly the crowds were big. Felt bad for the players. It was crazy.
I know. Yeah. You guys weren't popular, right?
They were. At that time, I was not. At that time, I was a fly on the wall, but it's certainly, changed a little bit the last year.
That's excellent. Well, I want to give the floor, or give the microphone, I should say here, to my good friend, Mike DiCioccio. So Mike is an entrepreneur, started about a year ago, started a company called Social Chameleon, digital marketing company. And he also, his proudest moment is starting the Avanti chapter in Buffalo, right, Mike?
That's right.
And
a cue card right here.
Yeah, that's right. And so as we just said that, Tony's the reason that inspired me to start my business 20 plus years ago. And you are the reason, and you are the inspiration for Mike starting his business. And like I said before, he introduced me to who you are. And so I thought it'd be very apropos to have Mike come on, my first co-host, and he's got some questions for you as well.
Thank you. Oh, Mike, great to be with you, brother.
Well, thank you for the floor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'll make sure. Okay, so I will say this. Pretty much you guys took a lot of meat off the bone. I had a lot of questions here, and Ed, you did end up answering a lot of them. But what I want to say is it's kind of interesting. When I started my business, and again, I'm a young entrepreneur, about a year in business now for myself, a lot of that I can say is because of yourself or Grant. I've read all of Grant's books. I listen to Gary Vee. But at the time when I was starting my business was when you just mentioned you were on Tony Robbins' podcast. Mm-hmm. I listened to that. Okay. Then you were on Power Players. I go, I recognize this name twice now. Okay, Let me listen. Right. You told the story about, I remember that podcast because I listened back to the Power Players one a couple times for some of the points that you hit. Mm-hmm. But I feel like, I've seen you at that moment, and you already were very successful as a business person. But as far as, like you mentioned, with social media, it was building and building. And it is cool to see now, about a year later, where you're at. So you were talking about on Power Players writing a book, and Grant was kind of prodding you to come up with a name. It was Rich People Play Golf was the running title. And I'm glad you went with Max Out Your Life, which is awesome. I have a copy in the mail. I know you mentioned that they're in the mail, and there's a lot of people, myself included, waiting for them.
Sorry about that. The thing sold out of the printing, brother. Like, I had no idea. We were a bestseller in one day. Actually, we were a bestseller in 1 hour. And so I apologize for the delay, but they're coming.
No apologies, man. You've given so much. You mentioned free content. Here's the other thing I want to say, too, is when you have a guest on your show, you get high-profile people, which you can find them in a lot of places giving great interviews. But what you do really well, not only are you humble, but as a host, you get them to really open up. Stephanie McMahon recently, that was one of the latest podcasts. Guys like Grant, you get to hear them in a different space. And it's really interesting for me when I'm looking for value. I don't want to hear the same thing over and over necessarily, and it's really nice to see, like, this is an organic conversation. And you mentioned you've stopped people a couple times. You talk about that they kind of transfer their energy in a moment when they say something. Mm-hmm. Stephanie was talking about the Giant, right? When she was like 3 years old, her best friend was Andre the Giant. And as she mentioned that to you, you picked up on her body language changing, which is really cool. So that's why I keep coming back for the great content that you provide.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I do want to hit on a couple questions for you. And the reason I ask these is I feel they'll be valuable for myself, Dave, the Avanti Entrepreneur Network, and any entrepreneur out there listening. So there's one story, I've only heard it one time, and not to put you on the hot seat, but you were talking with Lewis House, and this is a humbling moment for yourself. You were driving and you had a carpool of people behind you. You were going to, I forget what the event was, but you had your kit car. Do you mind sharing the kit car story? And here's why, because we just talked about humble beginnings, having the water turned off.
Yeah.
There was a story. Were you down to $18 at one point? Is that true?
I had $18. I lived
that number sticks in my head because, you know, as an entrepreneur, you have those weeks. You go, "Where's the next $18 coming from?" And
the reason I knew it was $18 is I had gone to the ATM. I'm gonna get them. Wow, it's really weird. Why'd that just make me emotional?
See,
I had gone to the ATM to pull $20 out, and it rejected the $20. And I remember having to call the bank to say, I need the money out of this machine. I needed to eat. And they said, we don't deliver tens. You only have $18 in there. And so I will never forget that.
Right.
And that was scary. Most entrepreneurs can relate.
The hairs on my arm stood up when I was hearing that story because I could feel when you were telling the story, your emotion and that being so real.
It was real. And it leads to the kit car story in this sense that as you're an entrepreneur, especially if you're a good person, you're honest. There's a part of you that's like, I feel like I'm a fraud when you're an entrepreneur. You know, like you just like, I'm telling everyone we're going to win and we're going to be successful. And I'm selling this dream as I'm living a literal nightmare. Right. And typically as an entrepreneur, your life goes backwards first and you start sort of almost having reverence for your former life as an employee, don't you? You're like, well, it wasn't great, but I always had food in my refrigerator. My cell phone bill was always paid. And so this mess, and I just want everybody to hear this, your mess does not disqualify you from winning, from making your dream happen. That mess, most of us as entrepreneurs can relate to on some level. So I pray for you to have the vision and the faith to keep fighting through it and not to believe this mess you have is some sign from above that you don't belong in your dream, because you do belong in your dream. And so my fraud was best embodied in this car. I wanted to look successful. And so I had a team of people and I was starting to do better, but not good enough. I wanted a Mercedes really bad, but I couldn't find one. And I found an ad that was for a kit Mercedes. And basically, here's what it was very quickly. It was a Chrysler LeBaron that was stripped down to its frame, and somebody had Velcroed onto the car a Mercedes SL convertible frame, except it was a little bit too long. So people that would drive by on the freeway, and people would look at me like, that's weird. And they'd look, and there's a back seat, which the two-seater is not supposed to have. And they'd laugh and point at me. But I had fooled everybody in my business. I said, hey, guys, this is right when Chrysler and Mercedes had merged. Ironically, I said, I don't know if you guys heard about this new hybrid, but it's a Chrysler Mercedes merger. I got one of the first ones, except this thing was the biggest piece of crap in the world. It was a LeBaron that was in an accident. The air conditioning blew hot air, and the car, you could not, when I would pull up to a stoplight, I would have to pull up very slowly because it was not welded together. It was Velcroed together. So hundreds of times in my life, I pulled up to a stoplight a little bit too fast, brake, and the front headlight would fly out into the intersection. And I'd have to get out of my car. Picture this, a young man in a suit in the intersection. I would pick up my headlight, walk back over to my car, Velcro it back on. You imagine what these people were thinking? And get back in my Mercedes and roll my happy butt down the road. So what happened was I went to a business retreat in Lodi. My whole team was with me. They all thought I was becoming successful. The cops pulled me over on the way back to the hotel. So there's 15 cars behind me watching the cops come pull me out of the car. And the cop comes over the car and he goes, stick your hands out the window. And I'm like, what is going on here? I said, sir, was I speeding? No. He wouldn't tell me what was wrong. So finally I get out of the car. He handcuffs me, puts me in the back seat of the police car. And my team's back there going, what is he, on drugs? Like, why is he getting arrested? Finally, the officer said, sir, what am I doing in this car? He goes, that's a stolen vehicle. And I'm like, did I not get the title registered? You know what happened? I went, oh my gosh. He thinks it's a Mercedes. So he comes back and he goes, I go, sir, it's not stolen. He goes, it is. Those are fake plates that's registered to a LeBaron. I'm like, sir, I go, sir, you're not going to believe this, but that is actually a Chrysler and the body is Velcroed on. And he looks at me, he goes, is this turning into a DUI, boy? I'm like, no, sir, I'm not drinking. I swear, if you'll go up and you'll just pull on the passenger door, just pull on it, it'll come right off in your hands. And he's looking at me like I'm crazy. There's now 4 police cars there, shining all their lights on me. Sure enough, this guy walks up. He looks at the side of my car, and he goes, pop! And he pulls my door right off the car with the Velcro on the other side, and he spins it on his finger, All the cops, all the police fall out onto the ground laughing, just dying laughing. Now my whole team knows I have a Velcroed friggin' car that I've been telling them for a year and a half was a Mercedes. And he comes back to the car. He goes, "This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my damn life." And he lets me out of the car, and I have to Velcro my door back onto my own damn car and drive back to the hotel and then explain to everybody what the hell I had. So I drove for a year and a half a Velcroed Mercedes. That is a true – you will never in your life meet another person who's had a Velcroed together car other than me. So that's how bad I wanted to win, but how bad I was really losing.
Right. And organized chaos, I think, is a nice way to describe. You're talking about being an entrepreneur and all this kind of whirlwind of, But
I'm also a closer. I'm also a closer. Let me tell you what happened. I sold that car to one of my own guys on my team 3 days later. So I'm beautiful. Yeah.
So I wanted you to share that, and thank you for doing that, because any entrepreneur at any point in any stage of their career hears that. I mean, obviously you were in that moment and you were looking to make the best out of it. You wanted your appearance is important to you as a business person. And, even though that happened, you didn't let that define you tomorrow. You went and you turned that into something. Now, years later, what can you date that story, by the way?
Well, you're all going to figure out how old I am. I can. That was probably 1990. Oh my gosh. 1996. So 22 years ago.
22 years ago, right? But that moment didn't derail you. You got back up off the mat, which is something I hear you say over and over. The quicker you get back up, we all get knocked down. Who gets up the quickest, right?
That's right. Everyone's going to get up, so you might as well get up now.
Right. So I like that as closing. Dave, if you have anything else, just any entrepreneur out there, if you're having that day where you're almost questioning, why did I do this? Or should I take the leap? Actually, when I was considering starting my own business, I'd love to share this too real quick. It was hard for me because friends and family are going to give you the warm and fuzzy, hey, if you're coming from a nice place in a corporate environment and you're making good money, close to 100 grand or over 100 grand, don't mess with it, right?
That's right.
Why would you want to change that?
Yep.
But when you feel like you're not fulfilled, the word that you used earlier, you said you can have the plane and everything else, but it doesn't fulfill you. So I'm speaking to entrepreneurs who feel like they're in a place right now where they're not fulfilled. They feel they can give more to the world, and they just might need a little bit of a push. That's who I would recommend would read Max Out that's coming out now, or 10X Rule, or any of these books, and listen to your
brother.
podcast.
Your wisdom for being a year as an entrepreneur is striking. Seriously. I mean, you're so wise, because I'll have people sometimes say, I've got a son, I want you to meet him, and he's very successful. And I'll always say, and I mean this respectfully, but successful compared to what? So is $100,000 a year successful? I mean, I think Grant would tell you that he spends 10 times that on jet fuel a year,
right?
Which so do I. So I think compared to what? And by the way, I don't think someone who has more money than someone is necessarily more successful than them. I know a whole bunch of the principal of my son and daughter's school, I bet doesn't make $80,000 a year, right? He's one of the most successful and fulfilled people that I know in my life, because he's living his dream and his purpose and his passion. But if one of your dreams and passions is to be financially successful and you're not doing it, you're successful compared to what? And don't shortchange yourself. People love to comfort themselves with, I'm doing better than everybody else, or I'm doing better than I used to do, or my family thinks I'm doing well. You got to face the man or woman in the mirror. And when you look in that mirror in the morning when you're getting ready, or that rear view mirror of your car, and you catch a look at yourself, whether you're proud of you, whether you've maxed out your life, whether you're chasing the best version of you, right? You can fool everybody in the world. You can fool your parents, your friends, your family, but you cannot fool the man or woman in the mirror. And ultimately what entrepreneurship does is it makes you face up to somebody you've been running from all your life. You.
Absolutely.
You. And entrepreneurship is going to make you face you in every area of your life. It's going to expose everything about you, and it's going to make you better long term. So that's what it's going to do.
Awesome. I think that's the next chapter of your next book, or your first chapter of your next book, Ed. That was fantastic. And Mike, thank you so much for those great questions. Pretty smart for a young punk 32-year-old kid, huh?
Incredible, man. Incredible wisdom.
I'm learning from Mike every day. So, Ed, before we go, so Avanti entrepreneurs, and Avanti means move forward in Italian. That's everything I try to do with myself and helping other people. I try to help them be better, so move forward. So imagine right now that you're talking to thousands of I'll say beginning stage entrepreneurs that they're freaking out. Obviously, remember the first couple of years of starting a business. They're anxious, 3 a.m. wake ups. I mean, I don't know if that ever stops, but what are some of the things that you're going to grab them by the shoulder and say it's going to be all right? Just do these things. What advice are you going to give to a beginning stage entrepreneur to get to that next level?
That's the first thing I would say is it's going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing I would say. It's going to be all right. Either way, it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
The first thing I would say to you is you're never going to exceed your identity. You better go to work on yourself as you're working on your business. The biggest mistake I see is people's businesses begin to exceed their identity. So you better, as you're growing your business, be working, whether that's social media content, podcasts, books, you better be growing your identity or it's going to get you. You'll never exceed it. You can never escape it. That's number one. Number two is you better establish a routine for yourself that serves you. Do not let the world dictate to you. See, people that lose as entrepreneurs are constantly responding and reacting. Successful entrepreneurs, even when they're broke, they dictate terms to the world. Their will is in charge, not the rest of the world's will. That has to come through your habits. In the book, I cover my morning routine and my evening routine. And you will find that many people share a similar routine of mine, okay? And one of those routines is when I wake up, I do not check my phone the first 30 minutes of the day, which is going to be excruciating for you the first month because you're going to think there's stuff on there you have to get to first. And what it does is it immediately gets you in response mode because you know what's on your phone right now? Problems. Emails you got to return, issues, and you start your day in stress, worry, fear. You're no longer chasing anything, you're responding. The third thing is you better get crystal laser, totally specifically clear on exactly what it is you want. Not like I'd like to win, I'd like some money, I want the business to grow. Measurable, tangible, specific, because your brain can't go to work on processing vanilla information or generic. The more specific, the more detailed, the better. Last thing, there's a whole bunch more. There's a thing in your brain called the reticular activating system. It's in the frontal lobe of your brain. You will change your entire life if you understand how to get what you're looking for and how this is the filter. It's like the matrix. It's the filter your entire world is filtered through. In my book, I talk about how to program that. All champions in everything, either do it consciously or unconsciously, are better at programming their RAS for their success.
Hey, thank you so much. And Avanti entrepreneur listeners, thanks for listening. Hope we brought you some great nuggets today. Ed Mylett is a total rock star, and he really is. He's just a regular guy that has worked hard and created a beautiful life for himself and for others. If you want to learn more about Ed, you go to his website. It's edmylett.com, which is ED, of course, and then MYLETT, edmylett.com. Buy his book, go to his websites, friend him on social media. He's a superstar. So thank you so much again for listening, Avanti Entrepreneur listeners. And as always, if you want to listen to this podcast again, this interview again, and if you want to hear all my other great interviews, please go to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Make it a great day and stay awesome.
Thank you for listening. Head over to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com for show notes and more helpful advice from entrepreneurs like you. Continue to find your entrepreneurial rhythm at the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast.